Hello my beloved friends, and welcome back to the Untold Stories. Hold tight. Now you are listening to another side of our life, the side of everything is allowed. So before you drift off, I thought it would be a crazy idea if everyone can leave a comment to let me know where you are listening from in the world. Also like and subscribe if you are enjoying the case. Right, let's get comfy and relax, and let's begin this episode by the first story, The Night I Almost Didn't Survive by Marcus. Alright, listen up. This ain't no campfire story. This is real. This is what happened to me, and I'm still trying to figure out how I made it out alive. My name's Marcus, and this is the night I learned that trust in this game is a luxury you can't afford. It was October 17th, 2022, around 11:47 p.m. I remember because I checked my phone right before everything went sideways. The battery was running low, but the last thing I was thinking about was charging it. I was in the middle of a deal with this dude named Rico, a plug I'd been working with for about 6 months. Rico was solid, or so I thought. He always came through with the product, never shorted me, and we had a decent understanding. But that night was different. We met at this abandoned warehouse off 5th and Elm, the usual spot. Nothing too special about it, just an old, crumbling place that looked like it had been abandoned since the 90s. Graffiti on the walls, cracked windows, and a front gate that barely closed. It was the perfect place for shady deals like ours. Rico was already there when I pulled up in my black Charger, the engine roaring as I parked in the far corner of the lot, hidden in the shadows. He had his boy, Javier, with him, a quiet dude who always gave me bad vibes, but I never said nothing. Javier was one of those guys who didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. He had this look in his eyes, like he'd seen too much. It always made me uneasy, but again, I kept it professional. I had no reason to doubt them. Rico was leaning against his car, a beat-up silver Impala, smoking a cigarette like he didn't have a care in the world. The smoke swirled around him, mixing with the cold night air, making everything feel hazy. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting a dim light across the parking lot, and the sound of my boots hitting the cracked concrete echoed as I approached. "You got the cash?" he asked, blowing smoke into the cold night air, his voice raspy but confident. I nodded, pulling out a stack of 20s from my jacket. "You got the product?" He smirked, reached into his trunk, and pulled out a black duffel bag. "Right here, my guy. Pure as it gets." He handed me the bag like it was nothing, like it was just another day on the job. But something felt off. Rico was too calm, too relaxed. And Javier kept glancing over his shoulder like he was expecting someone. I should have listened to my gut. I should have walked away. But I didn't. I handed Rico the cash, and he handed me the bag. I unzipped it just enough to see the bricks inside, wrapped in plastic. But then I noticed something. The weight was off. Too light. I looked up at Rico, and that's when I saw it, the glint of a pistol in his waistband. "What's this, Rico?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but my heart was racing. I could feel the sweat building up on the back of my neck. This wasn't right. He chuckled, but it wasn't his usual laugh. It was colder, darker. "You've been asking too many questions, Marcus. Talking to too many people. You think I don't know what you've been up to?" My heart dropped. I didn't know what he was talking about, but I knew I was in trouble. Before I could say anything, Javier stepped forward, pulling out a knife. The blade gleamed under the pale light, and I could see the determination in his eyes. "You messed up, man," Javier said, his voice low and menacing, like he was savoring the moment. I backed up, clutching the duffel bag like it could somehow save me. "Rico, man, whatever you think I did." "Shut up," Rico snapped, pulling out the gun. His eyes were cold, like he'd already made up his mind. "You're done, Marcus. Tonight, you're done." That's when I heard the sound of tires screeching behind me. I turned just in time to see 2 more cars pulling into the lot, headlights blinding me. Doors slammed, and I could hear footsteps, too many footsteps. It was like the whole world was closing in on me, and I didn't have a way out. I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted for the fence at the back of the lot, the duffel bag still in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. The cold night air burned in my lungs as I sprinted, and I could hear the sound of gunshots behind me. Bullets whizzed past me, ricocheting off the concrete. I could hear Rico yelling, "Get him. Don't let him leave." I made it over the fence, but not without a price. Javier's knife caught me in the side, slicing through my jacket and into my skin. The pain was sharp, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. My legs burned, my vision blurred, but I just kept running, adrenaline pumping through my veins. I ran through back alleys, jumped over dumpsters, and didn't look back until I was sure no one was following me. I ended up in some random neighborhood, bleeding and shaking, with nothing but that damn duffel bag. My shirt was soaked through with sweat and blood, but I didn't care. I found a dark corner behind a rundown convenience store and collapsed to the ground, trying to catch my breath. I could hear sirens in the distance, but I didn't have time to worry about that. Not yet. When I finally opened the bag, I realized why Rico wanted it back so bad. It wasn't just drugs in there. There were stacks of cash, IDs, and a ledger with names, dates, and amounts. Each page was filled with details, transactions, payments, debts. But the kicker? Some of those names were people I knew, people I'd been in business with. I'd been in the game long enough to know that this wasn't just a drug deal. Rico wasn't just a plug, he was laundering money for someone much bigger. And now, I had their secrets. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Javier's knife. I heard Rico's voice, cold and threatening, echoing in my ears. I knew Rico and his crew would come for me. And they did. 2 days later, my apartment was broken into. They trashed the place, looking for that bag. The door was kicked down, furniture was thrown around, and my walls were left marked with holes from where they'd searched every corner. But I was already gone. I'd left town, changed my number, and disappeared. I knew it wouldn't be enough. It never is. But here's the thing. I still have the bag. And I know it's only a matter of time before they find me again. I can feel it in my bones. If you're listening to this, and I don't make it out of this alive, just know that Rico, Javier, and whoever they work for, they're not just drug dealers. They're monsters. They have a reach that goes deeper than I ever could have imagined. And I'm just a guy who got in too deep, too trusting. Stay safe out there. Trust no one. Let's dive into the next story of this episode that will make you see the real struggle of addicted people. We titled it The Night I Crossed the Wrong Crowd by Malik Diaz. Yo, this is Malik. I'm gonna tell you about the wildest, most terrifying night of my life. It's not a story I tell often, but it's one you need to hear. This is about the night I almost lost everything, my freedom, my life, and my sanity. It was March 8th, 2023, around 1:30 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just checked my phone, and the light of it illuminated the sweaty palms I was trying to wipe on my jeans. I was at Eclipse, this high-end nightclub downtown. You know the type, strobe lights, bottle service, and a line of people wrapped around the block trying to get in. The club had that magnetic energy, like it was the center of the universe for anyone who wanted to feel important. But I wasn't there to party. I was there to work. See, I was a pill guy. MDMA, Xanax, Adderall, you name it, I had it. And Eclipse was my spot. The crowd was rich, reckless, and always looking for a good time. I'd been working there for about a year, slinging to trust fund kids, influencers, and even a few off-duty cops. It was a well-oiled operation, low-key, under the radar. I thought I had it all figured out. That night, I was posted up near the VIP section, dressed in all black, blending into the shadows. I knew every inch of that place, knew who was who, and who was likely to be looking for something extra. My boy, Tyrell, was my lookout. He was posted up by the bar, scanning the room for anything suspicious. He'd text me if anything sketchy went down. Business was booming. I'd already moved a dozen pills in the first hour, and I was about to make a lot more. Then, this guy walks up to me. He's tall, built like a linebacker, with a gold chain that looked heavy enough to be a weapon. He's wearing a sharp suit, black, custom-fitted, and a pair of dark sunglasses, even though the club's dimly lit. He looks me dead in the eye and says, "I need 20 blues." Blues, that's code for OxyContin. I didn't usually carry that much on me, especially for a guy I didn't know. But something about this guy made me nervous. He had this energy, like he wasn't someone you said no to. His posture, his whole demeanor, screamed power. "I got you," I said, pulling out a small bag from my pocket. "But it's gonna cost you." He didn't even blink. Just handed me a wad of cash, more than I'd asked for. I handed him the bag, and he walked off without another word. No handshake, no thanks, just a stiff nod. As soon as he turned, I felt the sweat on my neck. Something was wrong. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I was starting to feel like I was walking a tightrope. That's when things started to go sideways. About 20 minutes later, Tyrell texts me, "Yo, we gotta bounce." Cops just rolled up. I looked toward the entrance and saw 2 uniformed officers walking in, scanning the crowd. My heart started racing. I knew I had to get out of there, but I couldn't just leave. I had too much product on me. I had to think fast. I made my way to the back exit, trying to stay cool, but as soon as I pushed open the door, I froze. The guy I'd sold the oxy to was standing there, flanked by 2 other dudes. And they weren't alone. Behind them was a black SUV with tinted windows, engine running like it was ready to roll out at a moment's notice. "Malik, right?" The guy in the suit said, stepping closer, his voice icy. I didn't answer. I just backed up, but the door had already closed behind me. I was trapped. "You sold me fake pills," he said, his voice calm but deadly. "You think I'm stupid?" "Nah, man, Before I could finish, one of his boys grabbed me and slammed me against the wall. The breath left my lungs, and my vision went blurry for a second. The guy in the suit was standing inches away from me now. I could smell his cologne, too expensive for me to even name, and feel his hot breath on my face. "You know who I work for?" he asked, his voice smooth and menacing. I shook my head, too scared to speak. My mind was racing, but all I could focus on was getting out of there. I should have run when I had the chance. "The cartel," he said, like it was a death sentence. "And you just messed with the wrong people." That's when I realized this wasn't just about the pills. This was about respect. And I disrespected them by selling them bunk product. I'd broken an unspoken rule in their world. You don't mess with their business. Not even for a second. The next few minutes were a blur. They dragged me into the SUV, my hands bound behind my back with zip ties that cut into my skin. One of the guys threw a hood over my head, and all I could hear was the muffled sound of their voices speaking in Spanish. It was too fast for me to understand, but I heard one word over and over: muerto. Dead. We drove for what felt like hours. I had no idea where we were going, and the anticipation of what was coming next gnawed at my stomach. My mind raced through every possible outcome. I was trying to hold it together, but panic was creeping in. Was I going to end up buried in the woods? Left somewhere to rot? Finally, the car stopped. They yanked me out of the SUV, and I stumbled as they shoved me toward the ground. My knees scraped against the dirt, and I could taste the grime in the air. "You got one chance to make this right," the guy in the suit said, his voice still eerily calm. "Tell us who your supplier is." I hesitated. Snitching was a death sentence in this game, but so was staying silent. I thought about Tyrell. I thought about the life I'd built. And I made a split-second decision. It's a guy named Dante," I lied, making up a name on the spot. "He works out of the east side." The guy stared at me for what felt like an eternity. His cold eyes bore into mine, as if trying to see through the lie. For a moment, I thought I might not walk out of there alive. Then he nodded slowly. "All right. But if you're lying, we'll find you. And next time, you won't walk away." They left me there, in the middle of nowhere, with nothing but the clothes on my back. It felt like hours before I gathered the strength to get up. My hands were numb, my body bruised, but I had no choice but to keep moving. I stumbled through trees and dirt roads, trying to find some kind of direction. I didn't stop until I finally found a road and flagged down a car to get me back to the city. When I finally made it home, I packed up everything I owned in a hurry. I grabbed a duffel bag, threw in some clothes, cash, and my phone, and then I left town that same night. I didn't tell anyone. Not Tyrell, not my family, no one. I don't know if they ever found out I lied about Dante. I don't know if they're still looking for me. But I do know this: I'm done with that life. Done with the pills, the clubs, the danger. Sometimes I wonder if I made it out alive by pure luck, or if I just happened to say the right thing at the right time. Either way, I'm out. That night, it changed everything. Stay smart out there. Don't trust anyone too easily. And for the love of God, if you're ever in a bind like I was, know when to walk away. Because the wrong choice might just be your last. Our last story of today's episode, called The Good Friend by Unknown. Alright, I'm gonna tell you something I've never told anyone before. This is about my best friend, Chris, and how trying to save him almost cost me everything. My name's Jordan, and this is the story of how I got pulled into a world I never wanted to be part of. It all started in the summer of 2021. Chris and I had been friends since middle school. We were tight, like brothers. We did everything together. We shared laughs, secrets, and dreams, and had each other's backs no matter what. But somewhere along the way, things started to change. Chris got into some bad habits. First, it was weed. Nothing too bad at first, just typical teenage rebellion. But then, it escalated. He started popping pills, painkillers, Xanax, whatever he could get his hands on. I didn't realize how deep he'd fallen until it was too late. By the time I figured it out, he was hooked on heroin. I watched him go from this funny, outgoing guy to a shell of himself. He stopped showing up to work, lost his apartment, and started drifting away from his family. The guy who used to be the life of the party became someone I barely recognized. His addiction took everything from him, and it was taking everything from me, too. I felt powerless. It hurt to watch him self-destruct, but I couldn't just sit back and do nothing. I wasn't gonna lose my best friend. So, I made a decision. I was gonna help him get clean, no matter what it took. The first step was getting him away from his dealer, a guy named Ray who operated out of a sketchy motel on the edge of town. I'd heard rumors about Ray, heard that he wasn't someone you messed with. He was ruthless, a guy who didn't take kindly to people messing with his business. But I didn't care. I had to do something to get Chris out of that toxic environment, and I was determined to cut him off from that life. One night, I drove to the motel. It was August 14th, 2021, around 9:30 p.m. The place was called the Starlight Inn, but there was nothing starry or bright about it. It was a dump, flickering neon sign, broken windows, and a parking lot full of cars with tinted windows. I parked in the back and took a deep breath, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was walking into, but I knew it wasn't going to be easy. I found Ray in room 112. He was sitting on the bed, counting cash, when I walked in. The smell of stale smoke and cheap cologne hit me immediately. He barely looked up. "You lost?" he asked, his eyes scanning me with a cold indifference. "I'm here for Chris," I said, trying to sound confident. "He's done. No more deals, no more product. He's out." Ray let out this cold, hollow laugh that sent chills down my spine. He looked at me like I was a joke. "You think it's that easy?" he said, leaning back on the bed and crossing his arms. "Chris owes me. And until he pays up, he's mine." I didn't know what to say. I had no idea Chris owed him money, but I wasn't about to back down. "How much?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ray raised an eyebrow, finally looking me in the eye. $5,000. "You got that?" I didn't. I had maybe a couple $100 in my bank account, but no way near 5,000. But I couldn't back down now. I couldn't let Ray destroy Chris any more than he already had. "I'll get it," I said, though I had no idea how. That was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, I did everything I could to scrape together the money. I sold my car, borrowed from friends, even took out a payday loan. But it wasn't enough. I was scrambling, drowning in debt, and the more I tried to help Chris, the deeper I got sucked into his world. Every time I thought I was getting close to paying Ray off, the money was still out of reach. Then one night, Ray called me. "You're short," he said, his voice calm and cold on the other end of the line. "But I got a job for you. You do this, and we'll call it even." The job was simple: deliver a package to a guy named Victor at a warehouse on the south side. I didn't ask what was in the package. I didn't want to know. I showed up at the warehouse on September 3rd, 2021, around midnight. The place was dark, lit only by a few dim streetlights. Victor was waiting for me outside with two other guys. They looked me over, took the package, and handed me an envelope. "Tell Ray we're square," Victor said, his tone flat. I thought that was it. I thought I was done. But I was wrong. A few days later, Ray called again. "You did good," he said, his voice warmer now. "I got more work for you." I tried to say no. I tried to back out. But Ray wasn't the kind of guy you said no to. He had a way of making you feel like you didn't have a choice. Before I knew it, I was running errands for him, picking up cash, dropping off packages, even intimidating people who owed him money. I hated it. I hated every second of it. But I couldn't stop. Every time I tried to walk away, Ray would remind me of what he could do to Chris or to me. Meanwhile, Chris was getting worse. He'd started stealing from me, lying to me, and disappearing for days at a time. I couldn't keep track of him anymore. I was losing him, and I felt like I was losing myself too. But I kept telling myself that I was doing it for him, that I was doing the right thing. Then, everything came crashing down on October 22nd, 2021. Ray called me in the middle of the night, his voice low and menacing. "I need you to handle something," he said. "There's a guy who's been talking to the cops. Take care of him." I froze. Take care of him could only mean one thing. "I can't do that," I said, my voice trembling. Ray's voice turned icy, like steel. "You don't have a choice. Either you do it, or I'll make sure you and Chris both disappear." I hung up the phone and sat there, shaking. I didn't know what to do. The gravity of it all hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't kill someone. I couldn't go that far. But I couldn't walk away either, not with what Ray had on me, on Chris. I felt trapped. I was already too deep. In the end, I did the only thing I could think of. I went to the cops. I told them everything about Ray, about the packages, about the threats. I was scared. I was terrified of what would happen next. But I couldn't keep living like this, and I couldn't keep dragging Chris down with me. They put me in witness protection, and I haven't seen Chris or Ray since. I don't know what happened to Chris. I don't know if he ever got clean. I hope he did. I hope he's okay. But I'll never forget the lesson I learned that year. Trying to save someone can sometimes mean losing yourself. So, if you're out there trying to help someone you love, be careful. Don't let their demons become yours. Because once you step into that world, it's hard to find your way back out. Stay safe. And remember, sometimes the best way to help someone is to ask the professionals to do it the right way.